welcome to Suffolk Business Life. With me today is Andrew Diver of Beaton's Accountants.
Good to meet you, and thank you for inviting me.
Andrew, role-wise, your title is Head of Taxation at Beaton's. How does that fit in? What's your remit there?
Well, Beaton's, we are accountants who cover largely the Suffolk area, but also there are some national businesses who we advise. But my role as Head of Taxation is largely to deal with the income tax, the capital gains tax, VAT, and the whole wide remit of taxes that clients as individuals and businesses face every day, and to try and make sure that they're getting it right with the inland revenue, and also where possible they're able to make savings in doing things the right way and structuring things in the right way that mean that their business is functioning as efficiently as possible.
How long have you been with Beaton's?
It's about 2 years now.
Okay, yeah.
Prior to that, I worked for some of the larger accountancy firms in the country, not just in Cambridge, but also up north in sunny Leeds.
Sunny Leeds. What do you find? The whole aim of this show is about the local economy and stuff like that. In your capacity at Cambridge, Leeds and here, do you find the same questions pop up with clients and the same issues, or is there a geographic difference?
Very largely, they're the same sort of questions that people are facing and the same sort of issues. There are slight variations. Certainly, if you were to look at Cambridge, it's a technology centre. There's a lot of resource from the university being ploughed into the local economy, and that generates, and that's a big part of where people need to link up with. Up in Leeds, it's not really the same sort of environment. You have a lot of construction work, you have a lot of more your traditional manufacturing and industrial sectors. So it's really the types of businesses that you will find in the different areas. And obviously locally now, if you look around Suffolk, there's a thriving agricultural centre, and also we have a lot of business to do with the port and the freight industry, which obviously Beaton's, a lot of our clients deal with, being based in Felixstowe.
Would you say that's a sort of specialism for Beaton's as a rule, or is it where the lion's share of your business lies?
It would be where the lion's share of our business lies. We do have a broad sort of a portfolio of clients in different sectors, but I would say probably about 50% of our business comes from port and port-related activities, and there are specialist areas within that it is necessary to be with an accountant who knows those sort of areas. It's international VAT issues, it's the employees who invariably have come from overseas and come to the UK and have all
tax issues and stuff. Right?
Absolutely. So there's a wide range of sort of niche areas that the port and port-related activities require you to be able to deal with.
Pretty well documented, the economy's had its ups and downs over the last years. Are there any kind of new, sort of business owners seeing this at home, are there any kind of new questions starting to come up? For argument's sake, like Cambridge, there's I should imagine, a lot of R&D there. There's a lot of IT businesses, technology businesses. They will be trying to use new research and development funding that's available. Are you kind of seeing any new things come to light, particularly locally within Suffolk?
I think people are looking. You talk about research and development. That equally applies locally, not just in Cambridge but Suffolk, because the scope of research and development credits actually is beyond what you might ordinarily believe the credits apply to. We've got creative industries who have those sort of things for some of the website capabilities that they do, and you can get 200% tax relief on those expenses. So there are things like that. But I think one of the most important areas that people are asking about is finance. You hear about the banks not lending and difficulties. And it's the bank of mum and dad and friends and family who are helping small businesses nowadays. And how can you help those people who are putting their money at risk? And there are a number of schemes, enterprise investment scheme, and now something called a seedling enterprise investment scheme, that will give them tax relief on the monies that they put into people's businesses.
Would the seedling one, sort of oversimplifying it, would it be kind of for very small ventures that are looking to start? Is that what it's set up for, or?
This has been introduced from April, and it is for very small businesses. Well, when I say very small, they're talking about £100,000 is the size of the business. So it's still a considerable size when you're starting out. But what it will do is enable those people who put money into that venture to get 50% of it back from the tax man.
Okay. Right.
So effectively, if they put £10,000 in from the bank of mum and dad into it, the Inland Revenue give them £5,000 back, and they are only putting that £5,000 at risk for it. So it's a great help. There's a few hurdles and hoops you have to jump through, as always with the Inland Revenue, and forms to fill in. But essentially, it's only for small businesses, and it's only for those that have started in the last 2 years. So they are looking to try and help those small businesses, because if you read all of the press, they think that's the area that will generate the recovery more than the larger businesses.
The government's PR machine is relentless about how it's small business and enterprise and stuff like that that's going to dig the economy out of the hole it's found itself in. I mean, in terms of, is that what you're seeing? You know, in your professional capacity, are you seeing that mostly it's the small businesses that are
I would say
where the growth is?
It is actually very difficult to identify where the growth is. It's more industry based, and it depends on what industry you're in. I think some of the historic, you know, I talk about shipping because that's become relatively static, but the big players are still doing relatively well. The small businesses still doing all right, not too bad. Exports are better than imports at the moment. It's doing all right. That's for the business community as a whole, and the country. That's a good thing.
Exports are what the government, it's what the government wants us to do well in, rather than keep relying on.
And that's where the money is, and it is working that way. But you only have to look on your high street to see the retail sector. You know, they are struggling, and small businesses are struggling. Certain industries are doing well, certain industries aren't. Small business, we see a lot more of them starting because people are being made redundant, being given a lump sum, and they take that lump sum with their knowledge that they have, and know that they can do something better if they had that control and that ability to determine their own futures, as it were. So they are seeing this more entrepreneurial spirit coming through with people. So the bigger organisations are cutting down a little bit, and you are seeing this growth from the smaller businesses, the micro businesses. So we advise a lot of those actually at the moment.
Have you or Beaton's had much sort of approach on the sort of social enterprise sort of side? You know, we keep hearing about this. I keep up with current affairs in the media, and it's non-stop. You know, it's a group of people want to start a library, and there's some divestment fund for that, and all privatisation, depending on what way you want to call it. But you see all this stuff going on. Are you seeing any of this sort of starting to reach, Ipswich Felixstowe?
We've helped out on a number of cases thus far in extraction of businesses out of Suffolk Council.
Okay.
And those were essentially going to be run not for profit basis, essentially just to maintain the service and to ensure that it continues. Equally, we've assisted on various sort of community arrangements, such as public houses where they have ceased to be effectively run by the larger breweries, being purchased by a group of the local folk of the area who want to maintain it as a centre and a hub for the local community, because they serve as more than just a business. It's a place for the people of the village to come together. So those have been also set up, and government funding assisted in terms of tax reliefs to get them up and running. And there's a couple of those in the region at the moment.
I have to say, I run a couple of businesses locally. As you know, my take on what I'm seeing locally is it seems to be on the up. I'm sure it's not for all, and that's, you're always slightly at risk of sweeping generalisation statements and stuff like that. But people that I've been talking to recently seem to being able to find that order books are filling up. There's sales processes themselves are starting to contract, and money seems to be changing hands that little bit quicker than perhaps it was doing 12 months ago.
I think certainly 12 months ago, confidence was very low, and there were a lot of concerns about the future economy and where it was going. I think, obviously, this region is slightly different from some of the others. You talked about geographical differences earlier on. Certainly, the northern cities, you've got a lot more public sector workers who are now unemployed and therefore struggling to actually stimulate the economy up there. But down here, not so much so. So I think we're certainly seeing 12 months on, the businesses are doing better. There's still a little bit of a lack of certainty going forward, but I think we're certainly 12 months better off. And there are some, if you were to talk about green sheets, there are most definitely green sheets. I think people can see how to map their way in the future. I think the lack of bank finance is still, heavily hanging over expansion plans and plans to move forward and essentially consumer spending. As I said, the high street. If the high street isn't spending, then there's question marks. But businesses to business, and supporting things, as I said,
the stability sort of there, really. Yeah.
Absolutely, and there are businesses that are doing well and equally thriving.
So I remember reading an article where Sir Alan Sugar was saying that. Personally, I'm not. I'm not. He's going to care, but I'm not a big fan of this. But I sort of remember reading an article that he'd said about he was doing some conference and people were sort of berating him about the banks not lending, but there does, as much as on the one hand you kind of, as a business owner, you want to see the banks lending to other companies around you because that translates into business that you can then start to potentially get and all the rest of it. But on the other hand, you can kind of understand why there's this degree of caution, because if a company's balance sheet, the maths behind it is you'll see day-to-day life. If it doesn't stack up, it doesn't stack up, no matter how you rework the figures. And if you're essentially investing money, it's got to be on sound foundations.
Absolutely, and banks do have. I think their lending criteria has become more stringent due to the crisis and all of the problems that
protect their own balance sheet and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, and the government has taken steps to try and shore up the banks. And there's certainly a lot of incentives for them, Project Merlin and things like that, to actually to lend out. But it is a general feeling in the business community that there is funds trapped in the banks. The government are pushing monies into the banks to try and get this stimulation of the economy.
And it's not reaching your eye.
And it doesn't reach the end user and people generally spending. So it's I thought that it's getting stopped at that level. But as you said, it's important to get the financials right, and I think that's why we are seeing, as I said before, the bank of mum and dad, friends and family, angel investors looking to take the money out of their pockets or their savings and putting them into ventures. And to be fair, recession and difficult times have spawned huge great opportunities for businesses to and investors to make money, to get in at the ground level, and it's a buyer's market.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. Largely, the trouble is, a recession's fairly naff for everybody. Everyone accepts that. Nobody wants the economy to be in contraction or anything like that. But when it's there ain't a lot you can do about it. You've kind of just got to roll your sleeves up and get on with it. But there are opportunities. I myself have started a sort of web and software development business called Maya Solutions, and that was kind of born out of a bunch of conditions and opportunities that came my way, and I thought actually this is a good thing to do. So I think I think we are coming to the end of it now. And the trouble is there's so much scaremongering in the media. You must read this stuff with great interest, but as I do, that one think tank, the IMF, say something, another think tank says this, and half of them are just useless, because I tend to find if you go out and talk to people around you, you get the barometer of what's going on. You know, you talk to people in your local economy, and one of the things I've always noticed is the Suffolk economy itself, and this is something I don't know whether you'd agree with this or not, but I tend to find the Suffolk economy is slightly sheltered from the worst of it, but also sheltered slightly from the best of it as well. Absolutely. You know, there's a lesser variance in terms of what goes on here. We don't feel the full force of the recession immediately or for as long, but we also don't necessarily get the full force of the boom and, you know, the increase in the economy. Is that something that you've seen, that perhaps Cambridge and Leeds are potentially more? I should imagine Cambridge must be very volatile if R&D budgets get cut, or...
Actually, Cambridge isn't hugely volatile because of the strength of the university and its impact upon the local economy. Cambridge University is massively powerful and exceptionally wealthy, with very deep pockets, and readily has associations with
a lot of goodwill as well. You know, it's been around a long time.
But that sustains a lot of the businesses, so that doesn't actually have the volatility that you might expect, despite the fact of the sectors it's in. However, I completely agree with your sentiments on Suffolk being protected. It does seem that I think if you look at the industries in the area, you know, predominantly you're looking at agriculture and obviously the shipping and
shipping, insurance and things like that. Yeah.
And actually those maintain, and they are relatively recession proof. Everyone will still have to eat, and everyone equally has to have all of the certain things delivered and transported and exported.
So logistics is paramount, yeah.
So actually they do maintain. Obviously what they have to battle against is obviously all fuel price increases and things like that, which are passed on to the consumer. But largely those sort of areas are relatively recession proof. You're still going to have a demand for them. So if they have that, then actually a lot of the rest of the area also rides on the back of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
with just coming back, I mean, there was all the furore of the budget, as there always is, and then, you know, a few days later, the small print people saying, "Hang on, this isn't as good as it looks," and then, you know, the dust settles. Has there been anything that's come out of the settled dust that surprised you or potentially colleagues at Beaton's?
Actually, this budget was slightly different from most, because most of the budget, everything's been leaked before. But actually this one wasn't as leaky in some areas as before. We still obviously had a few heads up on things, but yes, we've had the granny tax and the pasty tax, which have grabbed the headlines, but actually those are relatively small potato in the whole scheme of things. I think one of the largest areas that we're going to see people having issues with is, and it's starting to hit headlines now, is the charities and the restrictions on tax reliefs coming through. And I think that one of the worrying areas on that is if people have got two businesses and one of them's not doing very well, that actually they are not going to be particularly helped out by the way that these tax rules are going to change. So you can't have one business helping the other one keep going, and effectively in that revenue looking at a net position for the two. They're going to say you can't actually have all of those reliefs to offset.
Yeah, you're going to be propping up one to reduce your corp tax liability. Yeah,
absolutely. So essentially, you know, those changes, it's due to go to consultation, and this is the way that the Inland Revenue are now moving. That they announce a change and then they say, "Is it all right with you?" Come back with any queries that you might have. So they issue some consultation documents in the summer, and we shall all complain vehemently about that. And I think one of the concerning areas is obviously the charities. Charities benefit from 10% of their donors give, I think, 90% of the money.
Large philanthropy payments.
And actually, that's an area that's going to hit dramatically. So I think there'll be a huge lobby on that, and I think that's something relatively concerning. Obviously, you know, you do some charity work as well.
Yeah, you know, I've just recently made a fairly reasonable charitable donation, you know, so I may need to talk to you off air about that. But, I mean, just sort of coming back to something specific that comes out of this is that, we hear a lot about youth unemployment and all the rest of it, stuff like that, and there seems to be a lot of goodwill amongst the government at the moment for the small businesses and the entrepreneurs and the kind of micro businesses to start. What advice, aside from getting a good accountant, would you give to someone looking to start a business now?
It is difficult times, but essentially you've got to be lean, and you've got to be looking to run the business as efficiently as you can from day one. So I would be very sceptical about going on expensive courses and things like this.
Private number plates for your car.
Absolutely. But looking at the relatively simple things that are out there and cost efficient. There are courses that are run by local organisations that will give you training in certain areas. I think social media is certainly a burgeoning market where you can relatively
behave like a bigger business and be trading out your back bedroom, sort of, essentially.
Absolutely, and relatively cost-free. Before you used to have to look at hundreds of pounds to put adverts in newspapers and magazines to get a presence locally. Well, actually now you can do it relatively inexpensively through the social media outlets.
Just a quick question, and this is something that I've heard people raise and stuff like that. When's the time to go limited? You've got a little business, it's going, it's ticking along well, it's showing good signs. Is there, for someone sitting at home watching this, a business owner or something, is there a hard and fast rule? With my recruitment business, I started as limited. With my IT business, I didn't. But is there a hard and fast rule that says, at this point, you should be doing X?
I think you have to look at what are the benefits of being limited then. And the benefits of being a limited company are limited liability, and also a slightly different tax treatment of how you can be taxed on profits and take money out of the business.
So it's more tax advantageous to pay yourself through dividends as a limited company director than it is through a PAYE scheme as a partnership or something?
Absolutely, and equally we're recently seen in the London Mayor elections that there have been lots of disputes about that because the different candidates are treating their payments in different manners and having tax advantages. But the limited liability aspect is a key thing because essentially if your industry that you work in has risks involved, you can mitigate some of those risks through insurance, but equally, if you're not a limited company, your house is ultimately at risk, and all of your other personal assets. So actually, the decision is not necessarily whether you're making £20,000 of profit or £30,000 of profit, but actually, is it likely that there would be a claim on you that might put the rest of your family's assets at risk?
So things that would fall outside of public liability insurance and employers, insurance and stuff like that. Okay.
Absolutely.
One other question: if you're someone sitting at home watching this wanting to become an accountant, someone that's sitting there maybe studying at the moment, school leaver or something like that, thinking, well, Dad's an accountant, I'll follow in his footsteps. Any hard and fast tips, golden nuggets of knowledge, or anything that you've seen that surprised you about the industry, or just some advice?
I would say it's a good industry to go into because it is a very varied industry. There are many different facets of it. I work in the tax field, but equally you can deal with insolvency and try and help businesses that are struggling. Equally corporate finance to try and buy and sell businesses. Equally auditing and accountancy work. There's an absolute wide range of sort of business activities that you can assist with, but equally a number of different people who you can come across. And I deal with the little old lady who living on her pension and has some savings to I've got a couple of FTSE 100 directors and large PLCs, and each has a unique sort of outlook, and it is a very rewarding career in that respect. But what advice would I give? It is just to study hard and to actually to try and think of beyond actually the numbers. It's not a process. You're not just going through the numbers and producing a balance sheet, a profit and loss account. What you're looking at is how can you really help this business?
Interpreting it into real world stuff rather than two-dimensional figures on a spreadsheet.
Because you're not going to differentiate yourself from the crowd if you can just do the bog standard work. You have to be able to give them something that they can use, management style information, so telling them actually your profit, your gross profit on what you're selling your food at your public house, you're not selling it for more, enough money because your costs are this, and actually the margins on that business should be higher, and things like that. Knowing the industries.
Okay. Following on from an earlier question, I mean, outsourcing. At what point, a business owner sitting at, might be sitting at home watching this, thinking, "Got my own business, it's going quite well. I've done all the accounts." Is there again this kind of golden rule or a benchmark as to when someone should think, "You know what, I want to outsource it"? I mean, for me personally, I outsource my accounts straight away because I'm terrible at maths. But, and I remember doing my first VAT return and I did it for the wrong 3 months because it's a month after, and that kind of made me lose interest very quickly in it. But is there a kind of ballpark as to when someone should consider that or not?
I know you'll be thinking that I'm not giving you any ballparks or figures here, but it is actually individual cases. But in terms of outsourcing, it is a valuable thing to do to be able to pass the financial control, and it's a huge range of where and how much you want to do. At Beaton's, we do everything from chasing debts for some people, picking up the phone and our staff are speaking as if they are from another organisation.
Sort of thing.
Absolutely, raising invoices or processing information to provide management accounts on a VAT returns. It's a huge scope of where you might go with that, but when would you do it? Well, it is very difficult to actually say at a certain point. If your business becomes a point where you feel that you're spending more time doing the administration and the finances of it, and actually you're not able to focus on
chargeable work that pays bills,
what your business is actually generating in profit, then you might wish to look there. Equally, it could be that you have a bookkeeper who does a little bit of work for you, but you feel that actually either they're going to retire or there's a case that they're not able to cope with the volume of information.
So could someone, just for argument's sake, outsource just the credit control bit for it?
You can outsource whatever aspects, but what you have to do is you have to have a system that works, that will allow that aspect of it to integrate with,
allow you guys to do your job basically,
but also allow the business to maintain control of that information, to be able to see it. So there isn't a hard and fast rule, but there is definitely merits in doing so, and it covers it. There's an advantage in doing so because you're not having an employee to have to deal with. So if you're not having an employee, then there's a whole team who are dealing with it. So holidays, pregnancy and maternity leave and things like this are all taken from your worries, and that's someone else's worry, the outsourcer's worry.
Okay, something I'd like to chuck in as a bit of a random question. What did you want to be when you left school? Did you want to be an accountant?
I didn't. I think I would have been quite worried if it was. No, I didn't, because I didn't know much about accountancy. In fact, my father was, he started off as a mechanic. It was a very different world, but he always said that he didn't want me to get my hands dirty in the same manner that he did. I wanted to be a footballer, who didn't?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my father was telling me that we need a proper job. I excelled at maths at school, and I had always a flair for it, so it was a natural progression to me.
Was it something you fell into, or?
Partly, I did take a business degree, so
followed on
it came through that really, and it was a natural progression once we reached that, but it was close. I could have quite easily taken an artificial intelligence computer degree. Could have been a different world.
Well, thank you very much for coming in, Andrew. It's been a pleasure to see you, and I'm sure we'll have you back again at some point. But